In a small section of the largest park in Charlottesville lies hidden history recently discovered and already making an impact. Tonight, on the final day of Black History Month, we're sharing the story of Pen Park, who once lived there, and how Black Charlottesville natives are reclaiming their stories. It's a familiar sound at Charlottesville's Pen Park. Golfers making their way through the 18-hole course. Stephen Waller has done that before.
It feels familiar because I've played golf here before, but I didn't know what was going on over here.
Over here is a small quarter-of-an-acre plot of fenced-off land just to the right of the 14th hole. Your voice is a part of this story. That's where we met Waller. You'll see the cemeteries for the three families who lived on the land, mostly in the 17th and 18th centuries, the Gilmers, Cravens, and Hotops, but Waller recognizes the walls around them.
It's most likely that these very walls were built by the same people who weren't given the dignity to be buried inside of those walls and given a name. So we are now the names.
Enslaved people weren't buried inside those walls, but they aren't far away.
These areas right in here just jump off the map.
Jeff Werner, Charlottesville's preservation and design planner, is pointing out the nearly dozen depressions or small indents in the land surrounding those walls, or what could be unmarked burials. In 2020, a geophysics company conducted a ground-penetrating radar survey. The findings?
I think we have a much larger burial area that we're dealing with than a dozen graves.
In all, 43 unmarked graves were identified. It could be more, but it was a starting point for the next chapter of this story. Who is buried in this park?
And I had to go to the Library of Virginia. I had to go to courthouse. I had to go to special collections. I had to look at marriage records. It was a lot of work, but I'm retired, so I had time to do it. No, it's a different route.
Sam Towler has been digging through records trying to answer that extremely difficult question. While he can't know for sure, he was able to make a likely connection from George Gilmer, who owned 77 people and died in 1795, all the way up to 1952, a John Gilmer Waller. Waller, as in?
My name is Stephen Waller.
The very next day, Jeff comes back and said, you know what? John Gilmer Waller is Stephen's grandfather.
There could be people, whose blood courses through my veins sitting right over here, and nobody told us about it. They don't even have names. They weren't even given names.
Through documents like this 1803 list of people who George Gilmer gave to his son and this 1869 Albemarle County personal property tax record, Towler helped get the story back in the hands of the people who were stripped of the right to tell it years ago.
There's an emotional part to it that's, where you're seeing how close your generation is and the generations of the folks you knew, your parents and your great-grandparents, how close those generations are to, the ugly history that our country has in slavery. I remember Dad telling me a story.
For the first time with this new knowledge, Stephen brought his parents to see the unmarked graves at Pen Park.
It's really awesome, one thing, and then it makes you think, we never knew much about Papa Gilmore.
Then you start looking in the documents, it feels like we aren't that far removed from the folks who are here where we're standing right now.
Through a city government initiative and tireless research, the once forgotten stories of Black men and women in Charlottesville are being told in a new light. Stephen Waller and his family get to tell it. Tom Chapman with the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society wants other descendants to have that experience too.
Because there's joy and there's pain and it's everything that we know. And once you tie it down to history, then you see the local history is important. And the story we can tell here is one of community.
Chapman and the Historical Society are continuing to reach out to community members, hoping for more descendants' voices to figure out what to do with the space.
We don't need to be in that position anymore of saying, this is what we're going to do with your burial ground here. We're beyond that. We need to have that descendant community, that voice.
Stephen Waller says he does want some symbolic gesture, but what he wants more is connection.
What I hope happens is that we continue to find more family members. There's still a lot of ground to be made up. And some of that ground is just as simply as, who are we? Who did our families know? How do they live? Those things, the stories that haven't been told.
Jeff Werner said this whole project has just been a series of coincidences, but maybe none more than this. Those are photos from the Waller-Kyles-Winston family reunion that has been held for years at Pen Park. Stephen Waller says all these years, maybe that was their ancestors calling them back.